Thank you for that. Much needed. I guess although this is a big room, we could really do it in a discussion way, I guess, right? So feel free to stop me if you have any questions in between. I'm very glad to be here presenting, not only to present the funding opportunity. I think the whole day was really exciting for us to know where the need is, and I think that's just the beginning of understanding the need. So really looking forward to have a discussion-based session here. So Nonpoint Source Management section is part of the Bureau of Water Resources in MassDEP and the Division of Watershed Management. And in the morning, our director, Leldon Langley, was one of the speakers in the keynote session, and he kind of gave a great introduction of our grants. And although Judy and I are going to focus on the 604B and the 319 grant programs, which are basically the Nonpoint Source grants. But we put together a few slides to talk about, not to talk about, but just to share information about all DWM grants. So if anybody is interested to the other grants, Judy is going to give a quick look of those grants, basically. So, Nonpoint Source Management section is one of 5 sections in the Watershed Planning Program. We are a Boston-based program, but we are co-located in the central region because of our water quality monitoring group. And to dive in to the 604B and 319 grants, basically, to start with, I want to give a little bit of context in regard to the nitrogen sensitive areas. So these grants were not, those type of projects were not included in the past, and we recently did a modification of our current NPS management plan so that we could include these projects here. So we are very much in that piloting zone. That's why it's very interesting to understand the need for funding for these projects. And the other thing is that it's not a lot of money, so that's why what we want to do from our end is that what might be a need that is critical, that is small but critical to make sure that we are contributing to the overall progress in the area. So 604B is the Clean Water Act 604B grant is basically water quality management planning grant. And this grant has, and the 319 is the Nonpoint Source implementation grant. So it's basically the planning and the implementation side of the 2 grants. The eligible entities are a little bit different. For 604B, it's majorly town, municipalities, regional planning agencies, tribes, conservation districts, councils of government, interstate agencies. We received, so both of the grants are federal grants, so we do receive these grant awards from EPA each year. And our regular allocation under 604B, we call it as base grant. And in addition to that, currently since 2022, we are receiving the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Funds, which has a strong encouragement to enhance equity and climate resiliency, which very much aligned with MassDEP's priorities for both. For 319, eligible entities are broader. So it could be any public or any private entity, and provided the water body we are talking about has public access. So most of the 319 grants are for implementation projects. And when we say the word implementation, we mean implementation of EPA's 9-element watershed-based plan. So, and we'll talk about how that plan is similar to some of the planning that is going on in this region and how the regional planning can be leveraged for that. So, restoration of impaired waters and protection of healthy waters. These are the two traditional type of implementation projects that we have funded all these years. And this year, onwards, we are going to fund restoration of nitrogen-impacted areas. And other than the implementation projects, we also support some non-implementation projects. The basic goal is to build capacity. And because these proposals, the implementation projects proposals, need some requirement, for example, the watershed-based plan, and many communities do not have that. So to make sure that we help building that needed capacity, we use some of our program fund to fund capacity building projects. And different initiatives include, so we currently have a regional coordinators program where 4 regional planning agencies are kind of partnering with us right now to develop the capacity, to develop all the requirements for a 319 implementation project. We have, since 2022, we started the Ag Coordination Program as well, which is kind of like statewide, and we just had a solicitation closed, and under that we are starting the Environmental Justice Coordination Program under these grants as well. We also use 604B as a capacity building grant for 319, and that's not the case in all states, but I feel like this is a great thing that Massachusetts does, because without that initiation, then there is no funding for planning, basically. So we have the both sides, planning and implementation, covered. Just to give a snapshot of like the last RFP that we just closed, 604B, we have 3 different parts of funding that we allocated, we are going to allocate, and also for 319, most of the funding is the projects that are in green, and there are some funding for the projects that are in blue. Moving on, I really want to focus on the theme of our NPS management in the state currently is meeting communities where they are through active and inclusive community engagement. And I'm going to present a roadmap in the next slide, but the takeaway message of that complicated roadmap is that there are funding as well as available for each step, and there are, so wherever the communities are, they can start with the funding, as well as there are available accessible tools for everyone to start the journey. So, can consider a road or a river, whatever you would like. I would like to consider it as a water body. So here there are the grants funding that are possible. So 604B and 319, I divided it in 2 components. One is the implementation fund and the other one is the capacity building fund. Whereas we have multiple tools that I will present there. So what should be an ideal starting point for Nonpoint source journey? And I think it would be to know whether the water body we are talking about, whether it has any impairment or not, whether it is part of the 303D list listed either as impaired or healthy for a particular contaminant or a use. And just to how we could know that, there are available tools, and one of them is a very new tool that we developed. It's called Inspire, and it has multiple different GIS layers in it, so you can take a look at your water bodies and see what kind of impairment is there or not. And in the slide, I provided the link for each of the tools when you are accessing the slides. But we also realize that not all water bodies are part of this list. So there are a lot of water bodies that are unassessed right now. So for those, we have to take a step back, and 604B grant can support water quality monitoring. Now, that data has to be under a QAP, and the QAP has to be accepted by MassDEP. So there will be a certain process, but all of them can be supported by 604B. After the data is collected, that has to be submitted to the Watershed Planning Program's external data portal to be listed in the 303D list. It is important that the water body is listed, otherwise 319 funding would not be possible. For healthy waters, the next step is to do a healthy watershed protection planning, and can be done through 604B. And we have a tool for watershed-based plan, which is called Watershed-Based Plan Tool, that is accessible to everyone. We have training materials. We also have contractor support that we could provide to the communities to develop watershed-based plan. And when I say the watershed-based plan, I mean the EPA's 9-element watershed-based plan. Climate resiliency planning can be supported by 604B as well, and we are encouraging the use of RMAT's climate design and standards tool. And then these plans can be implemented through implementation of healthy watershed protection plan, and that can be funded by 319 implementation grants. We can use Inspire and Mass Clean Water Toolkit, which is another tool that has a list of 126 best management practices and some details of those. And that's how I think that is our goal, to how we could reach the protection of healthy waters. If the water body is impaired, then the first step is to have a 9-element watershed-based plan develop and then get it accepted by MassDEP. And after that, other implementation designing, like conceptual design, site location and maps, all of those could be funded by 604B as well, and climate resiliency planning also. Now, all of these can be supported by 604B, but also, for the EJ communities and tribes, this could be supported by the 319 Capacity Building Fund as well. This is a very new flexibility for the EJ communities of EJ populations and tribes, which were not there before. Moving on. We just mentioned all the regional coordination that could be possible and funding for that. And the final step is for submitting implementation proposal for the 319 implementation funding. And that's how we are reaching the restoration of impaired waters. So basically, overall, lots of information, but one takeaway message is that there are funding, there are tools, and everything is available for each steps. So it's very critical to have the proposals inbuilt active and inclusive community engagement, going beyond flyers or a public meeting where unidirectional information sharing is happening, and doing that, adding the inclusivity, adding the equity modifiers to make these an inclusive engagement from start to finish. So that is very critical for the proposal funding. I'll focus on I have 2 slides for nitrogen impacted areas. There is a reason we are not calling it nitrogen sensitive areas, because now NRNSA is a term in the Cape Cod region. But when we updated our plan, we actually incorporated all 5 regions, including Cape Cod. So Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Plymouth County, and Bristol County. So 5 different regions that we are identifying as nitrogen impacted areas. And we know that all 5 regions are in different stages. So what we are trying to do is incorporate it based on their need, basically. So a big question that we get is that, okay, so I have a CWMP or a TWMP, what's the next step for me? So updating the CWMP or TWMP to a 9-element watershed-based plan is not a heavy-duty task at all. Based on what we know so far, all the 9 elements are most likely already there. Depending on CWMP, I'm not 100% sure, depending on how old it is, but most of the TWMPs have the 9-element already. So all we are asking to do is that you go through the 9 elements in your plan and just maybe give an addendum page with the page numbers where those elements are there. And then it will be a review process and approval process by our group, the MassDEP's NPS group, and then this will be, once we approve it, then 319, the town or whoever is the entity will be eligible for 319 funding for implementation. So, this slide actually talks about all different types of actions that could be funded by both the grants. So, not going through the details of it, but we have 3 different implementation projects listed currently, but I think today we got to know a little more about other technologies that we will probably include. So this is not a complete list. This is just suggestive list. So right now we have installation of enhanced IS system and installation of PRB, restoration of any wetland areas are eligible under 319. And for the EJ communities, just want to mention all the planning component that the 604B can fund for the EJ communities and tribes that could be funded through 319 as well. So, for example, if your town has an EJ community and this project will benefit the EJ communities, then you can apply directly under 319, both for planning and implementation. What it cannot do is sewering. So any kind of project connecting to the sewer is not going to be eligible because 319 is a non-point source grant. It doesn't include anything that is related to point source. So moving on, I think I will give this to Judy to give a very quick summary of the 2 grants and the other DWM grants, and we'll be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Let me lower this a little bit. How's that? All right, so I am going to give you kind of a lightning round through our grants. Padmini already described the 604B and the 319 grants in great detail. So what I will do is just give a very, very quick overview of those. So as Padmini said, 604B, well, first I should back up. These are both funded through the Clean Water Act, so they're federal grants. 604B is a planning grant, and as Padmini said, it is eligible entities are basically any unit of government. Megan Selby is the grant coordinator within our program, the Nonpoint Source Section program. So if you have any questions about the grant, you can jot down her email address there and you can contact her. The 319 grant, again, a Federal Clean Water Act grant. Malcolm Harper is the grant coordinator for that. So if you have any questions specific to that grant, you can contact Malcolm. We have one more grant in the Watershed Planning Program that I want to just share with you. It's the Water Quality Monitoring Grant. So this is a state-funded grant. Dr. Bob Smith is the coordinator. And so if you have questions, you can contact him about that. So this grant provides funding to eligible entities who are basically nonprofit organizations, watershed groups, things like that, as well as federally recognized tribes. And the purpose is to support either ongoing or new monitoring and data collection efforts that will increase the amount of external data that MassDEP uses for water quality assessments. And then the next few grants are offered through our NIPDES section, so not the Watershed Planning Program, so these aren't our grants specifically. So these are all state-funded grants too. The MS4 Municipal Assistance Grant, as I said, is a state-funded program that enables groups of Massachusetts municipalities. So an individual town cannot apply for this. The town, it has to be a group of 2 or more towns. And it's intended to expand the efforts to meet the requirements of the 2016 MS4 permit. Elizabeth Clark is the grant coordinator for that. So again, any questions about this grant, you want to give Elizabeth, you want to contact Elizabeth, I should say, to get information about that. The NRNSA, or Natural Resource Nitrogen Sensitive Area Grant, Leldon Langley talked about this a little bit this morning. Courtney Starling is the grant coordinator for this grant program. And the purpose is to assist municipalities with a variety of activities which facilitate the completion of a watershed management plan, and only planning activities that contribute to or come from a watershed management plan, watershed permit, or a de minimis load application will be considered for funding for this particular grant. And then the final 3 that I want to share with you are offered through the Watershed Management Act grant program, and these are specifically for public water suppliers. And Courtney Starling is the grant manager for the Watershed Management Act grant. This is designed to assist eligible public water suppliers and municipalities with Water Management Act permits by providing funds for planning assistance, demand management, and withdrawal impact mitigation projects in local communities. The next grant, oops, I went backwards. Sorry about that. I must have just flicked it with my finger. There we go. The M36 Water Audit Opportunity. So Water Management Act registrants and permit holders may receive a free American Water Works Association M36 top-down audit from a private consulting firm. Courtney Starling, again, is the grant coordinator for this audit opportunity. So if you're interested in that, please contact her for more information. And finally, the Ipswich River Basin. I know that's not in Cape Cod, but we wanted to share this one with you as well. And this is the goals of this address drinking water quantity challenges in the Ipswich River Basin, and also the continued prevalence and harmfulness of PFAS in drinking water. So Courtney Starling, she's the star for these 3 grants. If you have any questions about them, you can contact her. So that's it. That was a very, very brief overview of the grants that are offered by the Watershed Management Program. So thank you.